Hello everybody, welcome to my tutorial series Make Games with GameMaker. This is part 3 of the introduction tutorials where we're looking at how we can create our very first basic game using the drag and drop options within GameMaker. In the previous tutorial we created our very first sprite, object and room, which was our playable character of the dragon. We gave it some actions so that we can move it up and down the screen. So what we need to do now is we need to create the enemy character that we're going to be competing against within the game. In the previous tutorial we spoke about creating sprites and objects, so I won't go into detail for that again. We'll just get that on the road. Obviously if this looks a bit alien to you, I'd say go back to tutorial number 2 where we talk in depth about what we are doing here. So we're just going to create the sprite first, which will be the images that we use. We then need to create an object so that we can give the boss character some instructions within our room. We'll assign the sprite to this object, and then what we need to do is give it some instructions. So our first character, the dragon, we were obviously controlling within the room, pushing up and down, but this boss character is going to move of its own accord. So when it's created within the room, what we need to do is to get it moving to start with. So we're going to use the move fixed option. We're going to click up just to get it starting moving up. It's arbitrary what direction, whether we choose up and down for this particular game, but up seems to work. So we'll set the speed to 8, which is less than our player character, which gives our player a slight advantage over the enemy character. So we'll click OK on that. So when the boss is created within our room, it's going to start moving up at 8 pixels per step. What we're going to obviously want it to do is when it reaches the edge of the screen, we're going to want it to change its direction and start moving back the other way. So there are a few different ways that we can do that, but for this particular tutorial we'll use a very simple way of doing the intersect boundary event. So what this does is when the object intersects with the boundary of the room, then the actions that we now put in will come into play. So what we're going to want it to do is we're going to want it to reverse its vertical direction, and we can just click OK on that. So what we'll have is a boss character that will start moving up, it'll intersect with the boundary of the room and it will reverse its direction, so it will start moving down, and then similarly when it reaches the bottom of the room it'll intersect with the boundary of the room and will start moving up again. Okay, so let's just quickly run our room so we can see where we are. That was a mistake because I haven't put the boss in the room yet, so let's do that quickly. Okay, so we just need to add the boss character to the room. We'll just make sure he's nice and tight, so the room's not very big, so we want to maximize our space. So we've got a boss in there now, so he'll be created when we run the game this time. Should be nice and quick because there's nothing really going on. Okay, so here we go. So we've got the boss character on the right hand side here that we've just created. We've got him moving at 8 pixels per step. He's intersecting with the boundary at the top and at the bottom, and this is preventing him from going out of the room, and he's just moving up and down. And remember from the last tutorial, if I push down, our character will move down. It can't go any further than the bottom of the room, even though I'm holding down, and similarly at the top of the room. And we can see that he'll move slightly faster than the boss character because we've told it that it can move faster. So we have our character that we can move up and down, and we have our enemy boss who will move up and down of his own accord. Now we need to try and make this into a bit of a game. So what's going to happen is the enemy boss is going to fire demons and babies at us. We're going to want to try and save the babies, but we're going to want to try and destroy the demons. If the demons hit us, that's going to cost us some points, and if we save the babies, we're going to gain some points. If we destroy the babies, we're going to lose a lot of points, so we have to be careful about that. So first of all, let's create some fireballs for our character, which will be fired to destroy either the babies or the demons, but ideally we're going to want to just shoot the demons. So first of all, what we're going to need is another sprite object, which is going to be for our fireballs. So let's call these fireballs, and we'll load up the sprite. which here is one that I didn't make earlier. Okay, so that's there. So we've got the sprite, and then what we'll do is we'll create an object for the sprite so that we can give it some actions within the game. Oh dear, my keyboard's slightly off kilter. Okay, so when we create this fireball, what we're going to want it to do is we're going to want it to move in the direction of the enemy object from where we fire it. And the fireballs can move quite quickly, so the speed will be 32 pixels per step. So that gives it that. So when it's created, it's going to move in a direction to the right hand side at a speed of 32. Okay, so that's the create event. What we're also going to want to do is when it leaves the room, so when the fireball moves outside of the room, we're going to want it to be destroyed, because if we don't, what happens is these objects will continue to exist, and then basically we would create lots and lots of fireballs. These fireballs will continue to exist moving along even once they're outside the room, but the game still has to keep those in memory, and eventually that's going to slow our game down and cause problems. So whenever we don't need something, we need to make sure we destroy it. So when the fireball leaves the room, it's no longer of any use to us, so we're going to use the destroy the instance action from the drag and drop to get rid of that action. Okay, so I think that's all we need to do for the fireball for now. So we have our fireballs object. What we're going to want to do now is to be able to fire the fireball. So our dragon is going to be doing the shooting, and the way that we're going to shoot the fireballs is through pressing the space bar. So if we select from the events, key press space. So whenever we press the space bar on our keyboard, as long as the object dragon exists within the room, this action will be called, or these actions will be called. And what we're going to want it to do is we're going to want it to create a fireball. So for this we use the create instance, drag and drop. The object that we're going to be creating is the fireball, as we said. Now, where this fireball is created is up to us. Now, 0, 0, as it is, will mean it will create it in the very top left-hand corner of the room. What we're going to want to do is we're going to fire it from our dragon's mouth. So I'll set the coordinates quickly, and then I'll just explain where I got these coordinates from. So we're going to go 90 to along the x-axis, and we're going to go 10 pixels down on the y-axis. And we're going to want to tick the relative box. Now what this will do is it means it will create it from the x and y of the dragon, because the dragon is the one that's going to be creating the instance. If we don't, then it'll be 90 along and 10 down from the very top left corner of the room. But if we click relative, it will take the x and y from wherever our dragon is within the room. Now, why we say 90 and 10 is if we look at the dragon, we spoke a little bit about this in the last tutorial, but we know that the origin is currently up here at 0, 0, which is written here. If we were to center it, the origin would be there, and it would be 67, 75. Now, if we were to put in 90 for the x and 10 for the y, we can see that it will be roughly about here. So this is where the fireball is going to be created, because we're doing it relative to the dragon. So when our sprite origin for the dragon is 0, 0, we can see that 90, 10 will be around about there. Now in that little corner there is where the fireball is going to be created. Let's put these back to 0, 0 quickly so we don't forget to do it later. Put the origin back, and similarly the fireball sprite origin is there, so it's going to create at that crosshair where we tell it to create. So if we were to center it, then obviously the fireball will be created from the center on the x and y that we tell it. Sounds a little bit complicated. Once you've got your head around it, it's not too difficult. I think that's enough, so we'll just run the game and we'll see if we can create some fireballs, and I can show where they're appearing. So as we come into our room, everything's the same as it was a second ago, but now we can create these fireballs as I push the space bar, and they're going to come out from roughly the mouth of the dragon, our dragon. So it looks like it's creating fireballs from its mouth. If we left it at 0, 0 and non-relative, the fireballs would have been created from this corner here. And if we'd have left it at 0, 0 relative to the dragon, the fireballs would have been created here. And if we move the dragon down, the 0, 0 would have been here. But as we've said, to go 90 along and 10 down, the fireball is being roughly created from its mouth, and we're firing those fireballs along. Okay. Next, what we're going to want to do is to create our demon object. So similar to before, what we'll do first of all is create a sprite for our demon. Okay, and load a sprite for it, which is this one. We're going to leave the origin at 0, 0, which we'll discuss in a second. So we have our images, and now we need to create an object for those. So we will assign the demon sprite to this object, and now we need to create some instructions for it within our game world. So the first thing we're going to want to do is, for when the object is created, we're going to want to give it some movement. Now, this particular object can move in different directions, so what we're going to do is we're going to select all three of these options and give it a speed of 12 pixels per step. Now what this will mean is when the object is created, it will randomly choose one of these three directions, so it might move in a diagonal up, diagonal down, or straight towards our playable character, the dragon, and it will have a speed of 12 pixels per step. Now obviously that means that it could potentially hit the top or the bottom of the screen before it gets to our character. So what we'll do, again, similar to what we did with our boss, we'll give it an intersect boundary event, and we'll say that that will reverse the vertical. So if we come at the top of the room and hit the boundary, then what it will do is it will sort of reflect off and carry on that motion in a downwards direction. So it's just a way to prevent them from disappearing off the top and bottom of the screen before they have a chance to hit our dragon and cause us some mischief. Again, if it's to leave the room, then we want it to be destroyed, as we don't want lots of demons existing outside of the room, with the memory having to control those, see where they are, and cause ourselves problems. So we'll just make sure we destroy anything we no longer need. So when it goes outside the room, it will be destroyed. Now, as we discussed earlier, if we manage to hit our dragon with a fireball, then that is going to give us some points, and this is going to be part of our scoring system for making our game. Now, in order to do this, we're going to use the collision event, and what we'll do is we'll choose whether the demon is colliding with the fireball. Now, if it does collide with the fireball, we're going to want to destroy both instances, so the fireball and the demons, so they're no longer within the game, and we want that to give the player some points to be scored. So first of all, let's destroy them both. First of all, we'll destroy the instance of the self, so that means that it's going to destroy the object demon, as the object demon is what is calling this event an action. So this will destroy the demon, and then similarly we're going to want it to destroy the thing that it's colliding with, which is the fireball, so we'll select other. And if we wanted something randomly else to be destroyed, then we can choose an object and select an object, but we want to destroy the other thing within this collision, which is the fireball, so we can just do that there and click there. So both instances will be destroyed when they collide. The next thing we want to do is to provide us with some points. Now, as we're using the drag and drop methods within these tutorials, we're keeping it very basic, and what we'll do is we'll use the inbuilt scoring system, and what we'll want to do is we'll want to set the score, and we want it to be relative. Otherwise, if it's not relative, it will just write the score over with whatever we give it. So every time, for example, if we make sure that it's scoring 100, if it wasn't relative, then what it will do is just set the score to 100 every time we have this collision. But what we want to do is we want it to add to the score. So if we select relative, it will add 100 to the score each time. So our score will keep going up by 100 every time we destroy a demon with a fireball. Okay, so that will deal with the demon once it comes into the room for now. Now we're going to want to enable our boss character to create some demons to fire towards our dragon character. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a step event, and within this step event we're going to roll a dice, and if it rolls 1 out of however many sides we say the dice has got, we will be able to create a demon character. So this is the test chance action here. So what happens is every step, essentially a random number is going to be generated. If you think about it as if it was a dice, if it has 100 sides, if it rolls a 1, then it's going to create the demon, and if it rolls anything from between 2 and 100, it's not going to create the demon. And that's going to be, the dice is going to be rolled 30 times a second because we've got 30 steps a second within our game. If that confuses you, head back to tutorial 2 where we talk about steps within the game. Now what we want to do then is, if we do roll the 1 out of 100, we're going to want to create an instance of the demon. So if we go to the create instance object of drag and drop, and then we can choose the demon object, we're going to create it at a relative coordinate of 0, 0 for the boss character. So wherever the boss character is, at the top left hand corner of that boss character, because that's where its origin is set to. As we have a look here, the origin's up here. It's going to create a demon at this point relative to the boss. Now, as our demon's origin is also up here, it's going to create it. It's going to create essentially this square from that origin. So as the demon's sort of down here, we don't need to worry too much at trying to center it up to the boss like we did the fireballs on the dragon, because it will roughly look as if it's being spawned from the demon with the coordinates that it is. But you know, in your own games, obviously you can play around with that as you need to. Okay, so that should create an object demon reasonably frequently with a 1 in 100 chance. If it's a bit slow or fast, we can have a mess around with that. Okay, so I think what we can do now is we can just run the game and we can have a look at how that works. We should be able to fire fireballs now, move up and down the screen, and the dragon will create instances of demons. There comes one, we can hit it with our fireball. Okay, so 1 in 100 is probably a bit slow, or they're two, like buses, 2 come at once, like that. Now, every time we're destroying this instance of a demon, obviously you can see the demon disappears, the fireball disappears, and what it will be doing is it will be adding 100 to our score total, but we can't actually see the score at the moment, so we'll do that next. Okay, so it's probably enough mucking around with that. We can make sure that it works, so we'll close that down, and what we'll do is we'll try and get the score onto the screen next so that we can see that it's working as it should be. So what we'll do is we'll create an object which will enable us to show the score on the screen. Now we could write this into the code of one of the other objects, but then would have to think about drawing the sprite for the object as well. So let's just keep it simple for now. Whenever we want to draw something onto the screen, we're going to have to use the draw event. So we'll do that here. And what we're going to want it to do is we're going to want it to draw the score. You can always tell what draw, drag and drop options are because they have this little green square around them, which is different to the other ones. So these green squared drag and drop actions will only work within the draw event. So if you try and put these within other event types, they shouldn't work properly. But we've got to draw one here, so we're going to draw the value of the score. We have to choose where we want to draw it. So let's draw it, let's argue 300 along the x-axis. We'll draw it 15 pixels down. We'll have it say score, and then it will draw the variable score, and that should work. We don't need to give it a sprite because we're just going to be drawing some text on the screen for the score, but we just need to make sure that we put that into our room so that it is created when we start our room. So we'll just choose object. What have I done there? I've not named it score for some reason. we'll go back and change that. So we've put that in the room. We can just go back and rename it. I don't know why I've called it that. Obviously it wasn't concentrating, so we'll call it object score. There we go. Okay, so in theory, now when we run our game, we'll be able to actually see the score being written. Once you get into it, you can change whereabouts the score is written. You can change the size of the font, the color of the font. You can do all that very easily, certainly within the code action. So we can see when we destroy him with the fireball, we get 100 points added to the score. So we've killed 2, so we have 200 points. I think I'm going to make it produce these demons a bit faster because it's a bit slow. So we destroy them, we get 500 points. There's no negative connotations to the demons yet. If we don't destroy them, then they just carry on going and go off the screen. Nothing happens. It's nothing bad happening for us yet. We'll change that in a bit. But if we do destroy them, then we will score some points. Okay. Next, what we want to do is we want to create our baby object. So what we're going to have is an object that's going to be created by the boss, similar to the demon, but these are ones that we want to collect to save them. And if we destroy them with the fireball, then obviously that's going to be pretty bad, and that's going to cost us dearly on the points. So similarly, what we will do is we'll create a sprite for the baby. And get the images on there, and then we're going to need to create an object for it. Now the object is going to be quite similar to the demon, so let's duplicate the demon so that we have all the same events in it, but we'll obviously name it object baby. We'll change the sprite because we're going to want it to represent the baby. And let's have a look at this. So we're going to want it to still move in the same directions as a demon would be when it's created. When it collides with a fireball, we're going to want to destroy the baby. We're going to want to destroy the fireball. But instead of it giving us a score of 100, we're going to want to give us a score of, let's say, minus 500. Because we don't want to fireball the baby. That's bad. So that's going to take our score down by 500 if we fireball the baby. Again, if it goes out of the room, we're going to want it just to be destroyed if we've not managed to collect it. And if it comes into the boundary, we're going to want it to reverse the vertical direction as well. So that creates our object baby. Then what we're going to want to do is for the boss, we're going to want it to have a chance of 1 in 100 to create an object demon. Let's bring that down slightly because it was a little bit slow. So bring that down to 80. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create another chance of it creating the baby. So we'll do that 1 in 150, let's say. Actually, we'll make it less just so that we can see what happens. So we'll make that a 1 in 80 as well. And again, we're going to want to create an instance if we correctly roll the dice on each step, and it will create an object baby. Again, we'll make it create a 0, 0 for now. Oh, we need to make that relative. Okay. Finally, if the dragon collects the baby, then we're going to want it to reward us with points. So if we do a collision with the baby event within the dragon, and then we're going to want that to give us some points. So if we do a set score and it gives us 500 points, again relative, and we're going to want it to destroy the two, just destroy the baby. We don't want it to destroy the dragon, but we'll just set that to destroy. We'll select other because we're calling this within the dragon, so that will destroy the other thing involved in the collision, which is the baby. So that should make our score go up by 500 if we manage to collect the baby, down by 500 if we destroy it with a fireball, and that should make the game a little bit more interesting. So we'll run the game. And as we see, the score's 0. So it's going to create, the babies move fast, but if we collect the baby, it's putting us up by 500. Good Lord, we've got far too many instances coming on now, haven't we? We're smashing the baby collection. If we destroy a baby, we want it to come down by points. So let's just try and destroy the baby. So you can see it's taking us down by 500 every time we destroy a baby, and takes up by 100 whenever we destroy one of those. And it destroys the instances as we go. Okay, so that all seems to work okay. I think the babies probably move a little bit fast, so let's change the speed of what they are created at. Let's make that 6. So the babies will move slightly slower than the demons, and that's all hunky-dory. Okay, so that wraps up our third tutorial in our introduction series. What we'll do in the following tutorial is we'll add a background, add some sounds to the game as well. We'll also give our character a health bar, so when he's hit by demons it decreases his health and eventually ends the game, and then obviously that'll be a way for us to try and get as high a score as possible before we're killed, and we can generate a score around that. Once we've done that, in the following tutorial I think we'll look at doing a high score table within the drag and drop as much as we can, so that we can create a room where we can see the score and put that into a high score table and store those scores to see who can get the highest score. Okay, that's great. I'll see you for number 4. Bye for now.